Okay, so this is going to be part of Delhi's National Film Board of Canada film review extravaganza. That's probably going to be over an hour long, but it would make for some great background noise when drawing. I should know, I used Delhi's Mr. Enter video as background noise when I drew. Anyway, my history of NFB is kinda limited, but I have a bit to say. Back in my freshman college year, I went to the School of Visual Arts for Animation. I left because, well, it's SVA, but being there has exposed me to a lot of obscure animation that has a cog in animation history, and nobody knows it. Partially because it's Canadian, and the only real exposure we got so far was, this one time Cartoon Network aired those Canadian animated movies in their Oh Canada section. I barely had any exposure to these movies prior to my time at SVA. I was able to find out about these movies because I had an animation history class that went over some of these movies, and one of them was Bob's Birthday. Down-to-earth cartoons are weird because why make it a cartoon if it's going to be all about the dialogue and writing? Honestly, I think this is a case where the style of the animation is meant to sell those themes of the short. In Bob's Birthday's case, it looks like a Sunday funny cartoon, and those cartoons are known for being very down-to-earth while being somewhat cynical. It just works. The short is about Bob having a midlife crisis while his wife tries to throw a surprise birthday party. It ends with Bob rambling on about his life up to that point, and he decides to just be happy with his wife, have children, and run off, while all the other friends are still hiding. Oh, and Bob talks about how much all of his friends are boring and how his wife doesn't enjoy his company much anymore, and he does this with all their friends hearing them while hiding in the living room. It's so awkward, but it's hilarious because it feels so true to life. Well, for the record, I don't think my friends are boring. It's hilarious, but something that I think I'm going to experience one day once I reach that age in my life. I'm still young, and this is just making me want to value my time as a college graduate even more. Bob's Birthday is a very somber but funny short that captures the nuances of everyday life has to offer. Just fidgeting around our boring lives, wondering what happens next, getting nostalgic over the good old days. Now, I don't think anyone knows what they're really doing with their lives, but they're doing something anyway to feel a sense of satisfaction and happiness. I guess all I have to say is, why would Bob think that dating a younger woman when his wife is just fine? Look at her! She's adorable! Even that young girl can't take care of that plant. Maybe I'll know when I'm older.
The Danish Poet is a 2006 film by Toril Kove tracing the origins of one person back to one fateful encounter, including the aforementioned Danish poet. It's themed around the mutual participation of life, as is a feature of the artist's work, but this Oscar winner repackages some real conceptual concepts to retell a story that's soulfully woven, incredibly impactful, and a prime example of how powerful the little things truly are. The animator in question has a visual and narrative style emblematic of the film and vice versa. It reminds me of the drawing style utilized in Tintin serials, Linclair, I butchered that name, right? As the name would suggest, it calls for a lot of clear, strong line work and bold color design. You'll notice that wherever the character line art, along with an occasional object, is in focus, it'll very softly boil. It gives everything a nice sense of stability and differentiation. In Kove's works, you'll notice that the color palette is also a bit desaturated, but the occasional building or object does pop against the more dull background. The score, or lack thereof in parts, makes for an aesthetically satisfying piece without being too overwhelming. The music sets a very classical mood. It's not often when you hear this type of arrangement in animation at this point. The way the brass sets the melody with gentle confidence is rather chilling at points. It makes it feel as if fall is in full swing. The Foley work is also pretty good as well. There's not much that would have had to have been done with it, admittedly. This isn't monster trucks, but the sound work sets the mood quite accordingly. Now, as for the story itself, it's hard to engage in reviewing it without spoiling it. The wild thing about it is, it's not exactly structured like a story that can be spoiled. That said, revealing points past the first, third of the film feels almost like a crime to me. It's not high fantasy or a sweeping thriller, but the story is just so rich. The story itself is biographical to a degree. The same gist of the tale is based on a familial tale passed on to the animator, but nearly all the characters involved were fictional. It's a good slate of self-reflection. We're tasked to make a lot of difficult decisions over the course of our lives, but sometimes the biggest occurrences can be born out of a chance encounter, which, to be honest, is a tale as old as time, especially in a crazy year like 2020.
I want to talk about Get a Job, but Deli talked about it already. But that won't stop me from saying how it's beautifully animated, exaggerated take on finding a job, and it's done in a beautiful Bob Clampett-ass animation style that caters perfectly to artists trying to find jobs who just happen to love vocal cards. It's animated like an old cartoon because artists are super frustrated, so they make really crazy shit, okay? So, Real Inside is one of those shorts that Deli recommended I review for this thing. So it stars Buck Boom, a cartoon dog trying to get a job in the real life as an executive assistant. And I gotta thank Deli because this short is really good. The cartoon character is just so tired of life, theatrics, and wants to live a life of a lie-back and repetitive office worker. What's up with his accent? Now we know how Buck Boom feels. But yeah, Buck wants a more laid-back job as a repetitive office worker and not to be chewed out by the entertainment industry, and to be honest, Mr. Boom isn't far off with how they treat cartoons. Have you ever seen Cats Don't Dance? It's a lot more accurate in more ways than one. Why must an executive assistant get a ball out of a tube to test how creative they are? Man, this short is making me feel a lot of emotions. And that's probably why NFB's movies are so memorable. They're all personal projects made with the intention of capturing how these creatives feel on a daily basis for what they do. Not just in what they create, but also what they do in their day-to-day life just to make a living. This one is all about the job interview and how tense and personal it can get, and the fact that it's from a cartoon character gives it a more whimsical feel while still tapping into how eerily familiar those interviews can feel and how personal cartoons can really be. As the film plays out, we see the two talk about their upbringings and how they got there and the differences between live action and animation. It's so nice to see them get along despite their differences and cons. I guess the cartoon character was Real Inside all along.
Ryan is a 2004 work by Chris Landreth that explores the inner workings and highlights of another notable Canadian animator, Ryan Larkin. In an immeasurably unorthodox but ultimately emotionally plangent way, it gives a deeper insight into the latter's downfall through the impression of friends, family, close working associates, and the most strikingly thorough autobiographical in a sense, having the main film built off of a larger series of interviews, but the visual interpretations of its participants perhaps set the most damning evidence up. So it's hard to articulate how much this really strikes at the core. It's never really one attribute, but how the presentation of many come together into a full piece. The film came about at a time where CG in the art form was just starting to pop off. While the NFB is notorious for its early innovations in computer animation, this was arguably their first widely acknowledged contribution into the space. And with Ryan's visuals, it's hard to miss why. Stylistically, it's really hard to describe outside a few buzzwords. It's grungy, chewy, smudged, burnt out, sinewy. It's just working to immortalize the rougher parts of human life by literally making us look more rough. It seems like all the rough and tumble emotional wear and tear suffered by people as they go on is immortalized through how burnt out they look. I know, obviously everyone's going to have a bit of wear and tear on them, but for Ryan, even as the film in process is meant to be a bit more intervening, the damage has clearly already been done. A big aspect of the narrative addresses his alcoholism, a mounting issue instrumental to his inescapable creative stagnation. This is an element Landreth has heightened familiarity with through his own experiences with his mother, as alluded to far enough into the short. It's a journey since it takes a bit more prying to get behind, the subject's resistance to getting back on the horse, but the last 2 minutes or so just sends you into a spiral of emotion. Even though the NFB had by then incubated a whole new batch of exciting creators in the field, this film not only exemplifies one's process, but peeks behind the curtain and unravels the darker sides to a quick rise to creative acknowledgement. A cautionary tale of sorts, but one as unavoidable as they come.
I guess that's it for me. Deli, thanks for showing me this short, and thanks for letting me take part in this collab. These cartoons are really important to history, and it's great that more people are finally recognizing that. So take care and stay salty, everybody.
Go to the church and ask God to forgive you.